And welcome back to the channel where we talk about only good comics. I'm Brant, and this is Friday Firsts. This is the series where we talk about those brand new number one issues, character debuts, new story arcs, and the like. This is for books coming out the final week of May, which is May 28th, 29th. We'll stick with 29th because we know that Wednesday is soon going to become the only day for comics once again. Thank goodness. It's hard. For this show, it's like, oh, what day? I gotta save Tuesday too because that's when DC books come out. But anyway, um, final week of the month. Not a whole lot of like big books coming out, or at least not a whole lot of number one issues. But I do have plenty to talk about this week. I think I've got six. Yeah, I've got six books, first issues, or yeah, they're all first issues in this case. To talk about, I've got 5 books to recap from last week, and then I got 5 other anticipated books that I'm going to discuss as well. So let's jump right into some of those recaps. All right, first up we have Union Jack the Ripper Blood Hunt issue number 1. This was actually pretty decent. It's not what I expected. I don't know a whole lot about Union Jack. I've read some stuff in the past, but I don't really keep up with the British superheroes. Like, I forget what they're even like. I know there's Excalibur for the X characters, but I know there's like Captain Britain and that whole crew, and I don't really keep up with them. But I have again read some stuff about Union Jack in the past. I forget who he was teaming up with or what event it was tying into at the time, but I remember him being kind of a um, I don't know, kind of a wild card kind of character, and we definitely see that in this series as well. This was very dark and gritty and grim. Obviously, it's tying into Blood Hunt, so it's going for that very much horror vibe. A lot of blood, a lot of violence. But in this one, he like this isn't really a huge spoiler because it's towards the beginning and it just kind of sets the tone for the book. But he comes in to rescue some people getting attacked by vampires, but he's not really trying to rescue them. He's just trying to kill the vampires, and he doesn't even care about the people. He just he's telling them, "Why would you think I'm trying to save you? You better run because there's vampires here." And he's just like, for some reason, waging war on the vampires. Doesn't really care about the casualties that get taken down in the mix. So it's interesting. It feels like because of the people that he does come in contact with, that maybe it's not so much a redemption story, but maybe they're going to tap into a little bit of human nature there, a little humanism in him. That's going to make him a little bit more, crack that shell a little bit, but I don't know. And then there's like an interesting twist towards the end, and it seems like the vampires know very well who he is too. And yeah, so it was pretty good. I enjoyed it much more than I thought I was going to. Again, not much history with this character. Didn't really know what to expect, but I'm glad I read it because it was fun. It was fun, and it tied into the event, but it was also just like this fun side story of this character I don't really get to read that much. And it was his own story within this larger thing that's going on. So that was pretty cool take on that. Next up, speaking of blood, we have Blood Squad 7, issue 1. And this is kind of funny because not about the actual story. I will get into a little bit of disappointment with that in a minute. But in the what do you call it? I can't think of the term for it, but there's like a letter to the readers at the end from the writer, and he talks about the entire like history of Image Comics, and we all know that story, so I'm not gonna go into that. But he kind of talks about the idea that kind of birthed this book was, what if these this team was revived, and with a new generation, but with some of the old faces intact, that kind of ties into the larger Image universe, yada yada. But the problem is, obviously, this book was supposed to be Youngblood. Blood Squad 7 is Youngblood. They have characters that look somewhat similar to them. There's a character named Blockhead that's obviously Bedrock or Badrock. Um, and he talks about in that letter to the readers the legal issues with that. Not just, the Rob Liefeld thing, but Rob Liefeld doesn't actually own Youngblood anymore. It's this whole thing. I could do a mini little episode of how I almost, thankfully, dodged it, but almost actually worked on this Youngblood book that is owned by someone else that is not attached to Rob, to his brand, to Image at all. I don't think it ever went anywhere. But yeah, I didn't know that any of this stuff at the time. I found out about it later. But yeah, so it was interesting to see them talk about it, like, and they couldn't say it by name legally. But they said, the team, it. So that's what this was supposed to be. This was supposed to be a Youngblood revival with a brand new cast of characters, and some of them tied to older characters and stuff like that. But they had to kind of pivot and introduce a brand new team that was supposed to exist 30 years ago, 32 years ago, when Image formed and that universe was birthed. And they said you could think of this as like an alternate, reality version of the Image universe if you want, whatever you want to do. But that's kind of the spirit of the thing, right? So when I read that, it made me feel a little better about the book, because then I got the tone, I got the purpose of it, I understood where they were going with it. At the same time, reading through this book, I was a little bored. Honestly, it was a lot of, there was some very little action, but it was a lot of people in a boardroom, discussing marketing and merchandising and brand awareness and that kind of thing throughout almost the entire issue. I kid you not. It was a slog to get through this book, unfortunately, and I wanted to love it so bad. I actually was. Back in the day of Image, my two books that I did read from those originals, I was never a Spawn guy. I was never a Savage Dragon guy. What I was Youngblood and Wildcats. Those were my two books, and those were the books that I followed. And so I was kind of into this. But reading it, I actually read like 9 pages and put it down and came back to it like the next day and then finished it. And it was hard for me to get through. It was so, and it wasn't that it was a lot to read. It was just what I was reading wasn't interesting, wasn't exciting, wasn't, getting me pumped up for this. Unfortunately for me, it just kind of fell a little flat. But I do really appreciate where they were trying to go with this book. So I wish they could have used the original characters and the original concept because I think it would have made it more interesting. Even with it being this style of writing, I think I would have been more engaged because I would have been familiar with the characters and the premise, as opposed to what this ended up being, unfortunately. Next up, we have Amazing Spider-Man. I won't spend as long on this one. I don't think, aside from the one backup story that tied into the main story, I don't think any of the backup stuff was necessary whatsoever. I could have lived without that stuff. I was kind of upset I had to read through it. I just these kind of anniversary issues, and they pack stuff in there. Again, we talked about this on Comic Book Weekly last week when we were actually talking about this book. If a backup story is showcasing like characters that they're going to do something with, and it's a cool concept, okay, cool. If they're trying out new talent, great. And they may have been doing some of that in these backup stories. I don't know. But for me, I didn't love these backup stories. They didn't do anything for me, except for, again, the one that tied directly into the main story. Now, the main story in this issue was the return of Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin. Obviously, they've been building up to this. We had seen, him kind of laugh escape his mouth in a previous scene. We knew his sins came back into him. And this, we get the full reveal as Peter accidentally uncovers the Goblin uniform, thanks to the living brain kind of giving these cryptic teases to what's going on. And by the end of it, something happens with Peter, too, that was very interesting. We knew that was coming from solicitations and stuff like that, but I don't want to spoil it here. But I thought all in all, the art was pretty decent in this issue. And I like the story because it's like full circle. It's coming right back to that classic struggle with Peter and his greatest villain, the guy that killed his girlfriend, all this stuff. And he finally had trusted him, and now it all kind of falls apart right before his very eyes. So it was that story in and of itself. If it had stopped there, I would have been totally fine with this book, and I would have really enjoyed it. So backup stories, again, not needed. But that little epilogue one that tied into this was nice. Next up, we have Void Rivals number 9. They are still in the wasteland, and Solila has been hurt by Proximus, and Derek is trying to help her get to this place that he's been before. He doesn't exactly remember. He's not very forthcoming about why he was in this place, but he knew he had seen something there. And this, obviously we had seen, I think it was it Jetfire in the early issue, in issue 1? Or was it, I can't remember if it was Jetfire. It was one of the Transformers. We had seen the Transformer, and that kind of jogged his memory. He was like, I've seen something, and now maybe I'm kind of piecing together what this thing actually is. And he takes her to this place, and lo and behold, there is Springer, the triple changer Autobot, that is there, and Proximus catches up to them. There's a battle, and Solila's dying, and all this stuff. And now he's maybe that's their rescue. Maybe that's their way to get somewhere. We don't know exactly. I thought this was really solidly written. I love the way that they came into contact with Springer. I love that Springer just like defends them on instinct and is like fighting Proximus, and then he's just like, oh, there's more to you than I thought. And it's just like he's not bothered by the guy. It's almost like he welcomes the challenge, but at the same time, he's getting hurt a little bit. I thought the fight scenes between the two could have been a little bit stronger. I thought they were a little bit flat, I guess. But aside from that, I thought it was a pretty solid issue. And finally, for these recaps, we have Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider, issue 1. I was really looking forward to this book, and it did not disappoint me. So we find out sort of why Gwen is in the 616, that it's, at the behest of the TVA from like the Loki series, all that, the Time Variant Authority or whatever it's called. And that's why she's here, but she's not supposed to wear the costume. She's not supposed to let anybody that knows her know why she's there. And all this, that she's not supposed to be in contact with them, even though they placed her right in New York City where all the spider people are. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, so that lasts about a half a minute before she starts going, crime fighting and all that stuff. And, obviously things go bad from there. And then we get this whole thing where she's like flashing back. Somehow she's tapping into these memories of the 616 Gwen. Something's overlapping, maybe, I don't know, because she comes to a place where Gwen dies. Something bad happens there. She's fighting Kraven. There was good narration. She references all the people back home, the Mary Janes and her dad, and all the stuff that's going on there. She talks about her, ties in the 616 as well from the Spider-Verse stuff. So I thought this was a really fun first issue. I thought the coloring could have been a little bit stronger, but that aside, just nitpicks. If there's anything, it's nitpicks. I really enjoyed this issue. I like that it still left a little bit of mystery. You don't know fully what's going on, but the base reasons why she's there and what she's supposed to be doing. But I we're going to find out more and more as the story goes along. But so far, I'm really liking this. So yeah, I recommend this if you're a fan of Spider-Gwen in any shape or form. This will be a really good read for you. All right, with that, let's get into the books for next week. All right, first up, we have the first of 2 Blood Hunt tie-ins this week, Midnight Suns Blood Hunt. And this is interesting because it's gathering the original Midnight Suns, which is the 2 Ghost Riders. I think it's Danny Ketch and Johnny Blaze. And another character, a woman, I can't remember her name. and Blade, but they are fighting against Blade, one of their own, who, as we found out, is kind of behind this whole thing somehow. So they're going to have to take on Blade, which I think is a really interesting twist on this. So I'm curious actually to see how that plays out. But I don't know if it's because I'm not a huge Ghost Rider fan, and I've never read a Midnight Suns book in my life. I don't think. Maybe I have. No, that's not true. There was a mini series that revived it, a different version with Spider-Woman. I read one issue of that and I didn't like it. So it's it's but at the same time, I've really enjoyed um pretty much all of the Blood Hunt stuff that I've read, save maybe like one thing. Um, it's been pretty solid, this event so far for me. So I don't know. I'm gonna give it a shot. I've got high hopes for this because it's, again, you're gonna have two Ghost Riders fighting Blade. I mean, that sounds pretty cool visually at the very least. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to give it a potentially good just because I'm unsure. Then we have Black Panther Blood Hunt issue 1. And this is spinning out a blood hunt where Black Panther has become a vampire, and in this he's tasked with carrying out this mission for the Vampire Lord, and that's going to be interesting to see Black Panther on the other side fighting against, we don't know who yet, but I haven't seen any previews for this or anything, so I don't know exactly who he's going to come into contact with, but he's still like carrying out duties for Wakanda in this vampire form somehow. So it's going to be interesting to see him battling himself, I guess, and trying to do the right thing while doing the wrong thing at the same. I don't know. This one I'm a little bit more iffy on, so I'm going to give this one a possibly good. I'm just not a huge Black Panther fan, and every time I try a Black Panther anything, it just, I don't know. Just I like him like on teams. I think he's better handled when he's on teams, or he's just more my type of. It's my type of story when he's on teams, but when he's on his own, it just, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is. For me, it just never grabs me. So we'll see what happens with this one though. Next up is a new book from Dark Horse called William of Newbury #1. It's an anthropomorphic book by Michael Avon Oeming from Powers fame and various works. And this is interesting because it's loosely based on the anarchy period of 12th century England, but in anthropomorphic, form, and with like a supernatural bend, as this character, this raccoon, is fighting like the dead, and he's a monk, and his brother is trying to stop him for some reason. He's we don't know exactly why he's fighting the dead to restore peace, and his brother is, I guess, against peace and wants to fight against him. So again, it's folklore. It's got a supernatural bend to it. It's by Michael Avon Oeming. This cover art, if it's any indication, I think is going to be pretty cool. So visually, I mean, and so sounds pretty interesting to me. So I'm going to I can't talk this morning. So I'm going to give this one a potentially good. All right, I almost made this one an honorable mention just because I don't really read this kind of stuff, and Mike Spider-Slayer has been kind of excited for this character. I know a lot of people have become excited for this character. Not really, I don't really care, but at the same time, it is a kind of big #1 coming out this week, so I thought I would just include it in my main rankings, and maybe I'll even try it out. It says Ride to Hell and Back in HELLVERINE's first ever solo series. This is like the fusion of Wolverine and a Ghost Rider. Visually, that looks pretty cool. It's one of those mashups you kind of dream about happening and stuff. So that's pretty neat in and of itself. This takes place in present day. I don't know. There's an all new Hellfire Warriors team apparently, and this is also still written by Benjamin Percy, I believe. Yeah, who was also writing Wolverine and Ghost Rider. Um, so yeah, this is apparently a big deal. I did not know this until we were talking about it on Comic Book Weekly that people are really behind this character. I had no idea. I was just like, sounds like Franken Punisher to me, which I mean, it's just not my thing. But that doesn't mean it's not a cool thing that deserves some screen time here. So I'm gonna give this one a possibly good, just because again, not really a fan of the concept, but I'm willing to admit when something's hot and deserves a mention on this show, I guess. Next up is Death Ratio #1. This is from AWA and it's written by Mark Russell, who is Ringo Award winning, Eisner Award winning, all that stuff. His name's all over the place these days. I like some of his stuff. Some of his stuff's just not for me. But this particular concept sounded right up my alley. So I really like stuff like Squid Game, and there was one I just watched that was based on a webtoon called The Money Game. It's called The 8 Show. I really like stuff like that, and it's stuff that kind of challenges the effects of like social media and just popular culture and peer pressure and the influence of all this stuff um, in our lives and what it is actually doing to us and what it can do to us. So it's those kind of shows that and stories that kind of challenge those concepts and what we're actually being exposed to. So this is that kind of concept. It's taking place in the future. This guy wakes up from a coma and he wakes up to a world where everybody's wearing these collars that very something similar that we've seen. They're bomb collars, and if they can go off and basically kill you, right? But the way that happens is you have to get likes, and if you get too many thumbs downs or dislikes, you your collar goes off, and so you have to constantly be up. You have to constantly be entertaining. You know what I mean? You have to constantly do everything right to get those likes, and it's just like taking the social media platforms like your Facebook, Instagram, etc., to the nth level where these likes and dislikes are a permanent consequence of your life as opposed to your online popularity. So I thought that was a really interesting concept. I'm pretty into it. So I'm kind of low key excited for this book now that I've heard of it, and I'm gonna give this one a promisingly good because of that. Um, so AWA puts out some really interesting stuff from time to time. Not everything they put out is for me, but when they do put something out that I enjoy, I usually really enjoy it. And this, I think, is going to be something that I really enjoy. So we'll see. And finally, we have Grommets #1. This is from Image Comics. This is by Rick Remender, and it's a miniseries, as it says right there. This is centered around 80s skate culture, which was pretty big, at the time. And it's punk rock, skater boys, all that kind of stuff. And it says here, I'll just read a little bit of it. It says, an authentic look at 80s skater culture, a snapshot of the generation that turned skating into a worldwide phenomenon. On the other, it's a heartfelt coming-of-age story that follows two friends from troubled homes as they navigate their damage in an era when no one cared. So I was not in a place growing up so I grew up in the 80s. I was a kid in the 80s. I was not in a place where skate culture was really strong. I wasn't. I grew up in Kentucky, so it's I wasn't on a coast anywhere. I wasn't anywhere where it just was more popular, but skateboarding was still popular. everywhere at that time. And I skateboarded, or at least I tried to, usually just fell on my butt. Was never really great at the balance stuff at that age. But I did try quite a bit. Had a lot of friends that were really into it. I was more roller skates and rollerblades personally, but I gave it a shot. So even like in my area, which again, I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, which is the second biggest city of Kentucky, but a very small city in comparison to like what I lived next to now. There's about 330,000 people in Lexington, I think, give or take. Sometimes it's 400. Uh, so around there. So even then, it was kind of popular, right? So I can imagine, like, if we're exploring those areas, we've seen the movies, we've seen the documentaries, all this stuff surrounding skate culture. Very big phenomenon that kind of followed into the 90s. Extreme sports created out of it and all this stuff. But anyway, because of that, this is very interesting to me. And like the look of it, it feels like it's set in that era. These kids, troubled homes and all that stuff. I came from a broken home, had a lot of troubles myself, so I can really relate to a lot of things in the story. If not completely, I can relate to them on a fringe. So that kind of pulls me into the story a lot. So I've got high hopes for this one. I hope it's going to be a fun read. And what I've seen so far, it's like, okay, this is going to be one of those I can just sit down, kind of enjoy. It's not like superheroes and that kind of thing, but this could be a meaningful story. And yeah, we'll see. I'm not loving Napalm Lullaby, which is Rick Remender's most recent book, but maybe this will be the Remender book that I really do enjoy. We'll have to see. But for this book, I am giving it a promisingly good because of all that stuff that I mentioned. Sorry for going on a tangent there, but this show is just, this episode in particular, and the books that are coming out this week, have me being able to expound a little bit on my thoughts. Maybe I'm just getting more comfortable doing this show. I don't know what it is, but that's where my head's at today. So is what it is. Hope you're enjoying it. This is a longer show, apparently. Didn't even realize it. Well, sorry, I'm done now. All right. So before I go, I'll share really quickly with you a few other books that are not number ones that I am anticipating. First up is Knights issue number 7, I believe it is. Yeah. This is also from Image Comics, and I've really enjoyed this series. It is about a vampire, but not really, as we found out in recent issues that it was much more deeper than that. But it's like a supernatural thing. It's set, I forget, I think it's like set in the 90s, 90s Florida, I'm wanting to say. But yeah, it's about this character who is immortal, but it's because of other circumstances that made them immortal, not that they are actually a vampire, as they found out. So it's this whole thing. But it's really this like coming of age about this kid who is kind of crushing on her, and he had to move in with his cousin because of stuff that happened in his life. And then it's just kind of this weird kind of vibe where like one of their roommates is a guy that just died, and he hasn't talked about how he died, and he goes to like a support group. He's a ghost. So you got like a ghost and a vampire dude, and a dude that his cousin is like into some shady stuff, and he's just a music loving kid that's just trying to find his place in this world. And you got all this going around, this supernatural stuff, and there's a world level threat that's going on. So for me, it's been a really fun read. Next, we have Wolverine issue number 50. This is the end of the Sabretooth War. This has been mostly good. I think the beginning was much stronger, and then last issue kind of picked up. The middle, an issue or two of it just kind of dipped a little bit for me. I'm hoping for a very strong finish. Obviously, you have Wolverine on the cover here, covered in an adamantium exosuit, and he's fighting Sabretooth. So hopefully that it just gives us this like big, huge battle as these two, fight it out for the end, and hopefully Wolverine comes on top. I'd imagine he would. But yeah, it's been fun so far. Then we have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers: The Return, issue 4. This is the one that is co-written by Amy Jo Johnson, who played the Pink Ranger on the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers TV show, the American version of that franchise. And it's been really good. It's like 22 years, something like that, since like they were Power Rangers. A couple of them have passed away because the real people that played them passed away, so they kind of played that into the story. And Jason is being a Power Ranger, but there's something going on there. Rita's daughter is in the picture, or niece, or something like that. So it's been a really, really phenomenal read so far. So I'm really enjoying this book. Green Arrow number 12 is up next as we finally get all the Arrow family together, but probably just for about a minute. Because obviously the whole premise of this book when it launched was that Merlin and Waller and they've figured out a way to keep the Arrow family apart, and it's like they get pulled into the time stream and sent to alternate realities and all this stuff, and they're like literally cannot be together. But they finally found their way together. I don't remember exactly what happened last issue, but I think Green Arrow was confronting Merlin, or he was about to. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, they finally are together, but something's going to break that up as we're counting down to Absolute Power, where everything is going to go crazy. So especially because Green Arrow is currently working with Amanda Waller. So that's, something's going to go to heck with that. So we'll have to see what happens, but it's been a really good series. And then finally, Ultimate Spider-Man number 5. This is the secret origin of this version of Harry Osborn, who is the Green Goblin in this story. So I'm really curious to see this. This has been a phenomenal book from start to present so far. Every issue has been really good, really solid. And I can't wait to see how this version of Harry becomes the Green Goblin in the Ultimate Universe this time around. So looking forward to that as well. With that said, I've kept you long enough. I appreciate you watching. Always, I appreciate all of you and the comments. Keep them coming. I really do enjoy reading those and replying to them with your thoughts, with any questions, suggestions, whatever you have. I love interacting with you. So thank you for that. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please give it those thumbs ups because it really does help and it makes me feel good. It makes my day. And of course, you can hit that subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss any content going live up on this channel. You can follow me across social media at Only Good Comics, and you can type in onlygoodcomics.com to bring you right back to this YouTube channel where we talk about only good comics. Until next time, thanks for watching. Take care. Keep reading those comics.